Good evening and welcome again to yet another program on Globespan 24x7. I'm Charles Sugrim. I want to welcome you to tonight's program, a very, very interesting program. As you know, the recount has started, so we'll have an update on that direct from our participants in Guyana. To all our viewers out there, we want to wish you belated Mother's Day greetings to all our mothers. We know you are God's greatest gift to us, and without you, none of us would have been here. So, mom, all moms all over the world who's watching us, a very happy Mother's Day to you. Um, Tonight, we are privileged to have with us no stranger. Lenox Shuman is the leader of the Liberty and Justice Party. Um, he will be he's with us tonight. We expect Says to be on shortly, and also Mr. Jonas. We are trying to get them online. This evening, we tried to get a representative from APNU AFC, but we tried and we tried and we tried throughout the day. We were unable to get any one of them. We were trying to get someone from Congress Place or even someone in the street in Georgetown that represent the PNC, even here in North America, and we were very unsuccessful. But that's fine. We will continue because we want to. This program is dedicated to the people of Guyana, so we want to be fair. We want to be ensured that the views expressed on this program is not bent towards a political party, but to all Guyana. And we want to hear all sides in this debate. And that's why we'd have welcomed a representative from APNU AFC, but unfortunately we don't have that tonight. Again, we want to thank Nohar Singh for giving us this platform to air the views of the people of Guyana, and also to Devin, our technical specialist, who is doing a marvelous job in getting us along the way. Tonight, we have a special guest with us, and he will tell us exactly what his intentions are. So before I bring in Lenox to tell us what's going on with the count, we want to welcome Mr. Ramnarine Sahadeo. He's a retired attorney at law in Canada. Of course, he's Guyanese, and he is with other freedom fighters, if you want to call them that way. I think they're real great sons of Guyana. They have set a petition. I know the government, the coalition, they want to recall, or they're asking the Canadian government to recall the Canadian ambassador to Guyana. For what reason? We are not sure. But Mr. Ramnarine Sahadeo will tell us exactly what's going on and what his plans are. Mr. Sahadeo, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Namaste and happy Mother's Day to all your viewers and listeners.
Thank you. Mr. Sahadeo, tell us exactly what you're doing and what do you want from our viewers, what do you expect from our viewers?
Well, what I would like them to do is look at the petition that we started just last Friday, and we have over 1,700 signatures already. It is designed to go to the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, and to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. The reason it started, as you mentioned, is that there seems to be a petition also that started a while ago asking that she be recalled. If people look at the background and the reasons, we'll know it's very flimsy. I am a citizen of Canada. I do not have an ID card for Guyana. I tried to get one, but I wore a short pants and that didn't qualify me to go in the office. I pay taxes in Canada. This is my representative. He is doing a marvelous job, and there is no way that I think he should be recalled. If he is recalled, there will be a big gap there because she is also cooperating with all the other foreign embassies in their function to see that democracy exists in Guyana. mainly by the counting of the votes to see that they're credible and trustworthy. I was reluctant to get involved in this, but many people are very angry. And because I was a lawyer for 35 years, I'm now retired, as you said, I had to screen a lot of letters and showed people how to write letters and so on. And those letters were basically designed to call for personal sanctions against certain individuals. Randy DePoo had his started his petition, and it had over 7,000 signatures, I believe. And he was bold enough to name individuals in his petition. But since that, we found out about this attempt to recall the representative of the Canadian embassy, and we got involved in that.
So, Mr. Ram, when you started this thing I think about a week or two ago, how many signatures do you have so far? Because I know I sent it out to my contact list, and I think some people from my list signed up as well. I know John Mangle, he also sent it on his Facebook, and according to Darish from Canada, he said there were like 400 persons signed up. So how many people so far have signed up on your petition?
Firstly, we only started Friday.
Okay.
And it was to the technical expert of Daesh. We were reaching out to get people to start. We were trying to get somebody with the expertise to start a petition, because I only like to read and write when I can touch the pages. I belong to that generation. So there was a lot of correspondence, emails going back and forth. Nobody wanted to do it. It had to be done. Nobody wanted to do it. And once we got Harsh aboard, we sit down for 1 hour and we drafted it out, and that was Friday. Excellent. It has over 1,700 as of today. Wow. When I last checked.
Oh, beautiful. So how much signatures were you looking for?
Well, I think we're going to go at least for a week and see what happens, because the Prime Minister's office had already responded to me because we were doing letter writing, which is not efficient. And all these politicians around the world, not just Canada, it's a very trying time for them. Don't want to flood them with papers. Some of these letters, 5, 6, 7 pages long, repeating all the stories since December 2018, when the no confidence vote was passed. Okay. And, we have to edit those things because you don't want to waste all that paper. The people know what's going on. I'm sure the CIA know what's going on. The RCMP know what's going on. Why repeat all of this? That's why the foreign consulates are there.
Thank you, Ram. And it's so amazing what you guys are doing from all over the world. And because it's a global village now, as we know, so everyone can communicate with each other so fast. So for our viewers who are watching now, and for those who will share our link, we ask you to share that link that Ram has initiated, and ask your, whoever you have on your page, your followers, to please sign that petition, not to recall the Canadian High Commissioner to Guyana. I think she is doing a marvelous job. The sad part of this whole equation is that in 2015, when the ABCE countries were supporting the coalition at that time, that they want, well, not the coalition, they always support what is free and fair. And the free and fair election in 2015, they supported that, and the coalition went into office. Now the coalition is saying these are all PPP members now because they're speaking the truth. And that's the problem with our country and around the world, is that when you speak the truth, you're somehow demonized, or you're put on one side because your truth kind of give credence to what is going on the majority of the people. And of course, the minority always have problems with that. So Ram, we want to thank you.
I just want to make a point. It's not just the petition. If people read it, it will show not just support for Lillian Chatterjee, but all the other, you will see the pictures of all the other countries' representatives, the UK, USA, and so on, because they're all supporting one cause. People are saying that they're biased. If they're biased in favor of democracy, of truth, as you said. And one of the comments, there's some lovely comments that I've been receiving. One from a young lady, she says, when we finish here, they will know that next time you want to pick on a high commissioner, make sure you're armed with the facts and make sure her name is not Jillian Chatterjee.
Amazing. That is so beautifully put, Ram. You can stay on the program with us tonight, and you can ask our other guest question as well. So I'll call on you to ask any question. But tonight, I know Lenox have to leave us not long from now. He has another appointment. But Lenox, welcome again. Just before you come on the program, I just want to say this to our viewers. We all know we are recounting regions 1, 2, 3, and 4. As of today, Region 1 that they put on the tabulation sheet, and Lenox, you can help us here. Region 1 had 18,952 electors. Of that, 12,057 persons voted. As of tonight, when I looked at the tabulation sheet, they have tabulated 7,424 votes for Region 1, which is 62% of those who voted. Now, I don't know if more tabulation was done, but it's not on the tabulation sheet. Region 2, we have 37,979 electors. Of that, 26,492 voted. As of tonight, 8,459 persons was counted as vote of the 26,000, which represents 32%. Region 3 is 100,000, just over 100,000. Of that, 72,000 voted. Of that 72,000, 10,359 has already been counted, which is represent 14%. Region 4, of course, the largest region, 285,000. Of that, 194,000 people voted. 12,867 was actually counted and recorded, which represents 6.6% of the persons voted. Lenox, you're on the ground. Tell us what is going on. I know you had a meeting this morning with the Elections Commission, you and the other small parties. Give us an idea what went on and what seems to be. I think today more ballots was counted than any other previous day. So give us the feedback.
Well, good evening, Charles. Good evening to the viewers. And I can't see because I'm using my phone. The computer is the internet is a little bit shoddy here right now. So I'm using my phone. You've got me at a bit of a disadvantage because I can't really see the guest speakers on there.
That's okay.
But before we start, let me say thanks to all of the hardworking people who are trying to contain COVID and the people who are working to ensure that we are still a law-abiding society, for their stellar work, especially through this global pandemic. That being said, also, let me say thank you to the hardworking staff of the Guyana Elections Commission, who continue to, what I'd say, show their worth, show their value to this country. What we have seen, at least from day one, there was a bit of growing pains. We thought it would be chaotic. It was a little bit chaotic to start. But as the days progressed, the machine became a bit more well-oiled. And what we are seeing on the ground is that everything, had they done this, what they're doing right now, on 3rd and 4th, we would not be in this position. The level of transparency that exists, it's beyond any I've seen. And had the Guyana Elections Commission, they've done themselves a disservice in not streaming this process live. Because when you look at what is happening on the ground, the Guyana Elections Commission, the staff of the Elections Commission are doing a fantastic job with the level of transparency. It doesn't mean that it is free from discrepancies. It does not mean it's free from other minor issues and so on and so forth. But the staff of the Guyana Elections Commission have done a fantastic job. That being said, there are some things that obviously need a bit more streamlining in terms of the conflict resolution mechanism that should be in place. There seems to be some inconsistencies in how the supervisors in each station responds to conflict, how they respond to query. There's no consistency in that component. And there are, let's say earlier in the week, there was an incident where ministers or so-called, what do you say, immediate past
Former
ministers,
ministers.
former ministers were going into these polling booths and wanting to, not polling, correction, tabulate, recount stations and want to dictate to the staff of GCOM how to go about doing their work. And there is only one reason that I could see why they would go there, is to attempt to intimidate the people. It is not that they gave any credence or any kind of contribution to accelerating the process. Their motivation was just to go in there to manipulate the process and to intimidate the people in the room and in the area and so on and so forth. I'm happy to say that the Guyana Elections Commission, at least I would want to say the Secretariat at this point, would have done their work and say, no, we have said one counting agent per station, and that is what we're going to stick to. There are still some minor issues where people from the APNU camps are being permitted that latitude to go into some of the rooms, and that is something, once again, I'm sure that we are going to have an opportunity to address. The recount of the ballots, I'd say right now we have completed just over 10%, 247 boxes. I don't know the specific figures of voting regions and stuff, but we've completed roughly 10% of the total boxes. Now, that being said, we had a meeting this morning with the Guyana Elections Commission, the commissioners and Madam Chair. We voiced our concerns at the pace of the recount. Obviously, we commended her and the commission for doing such a fantastic job at this juncture. And we offered our recommendations in what we think can be better. We have seen that there was a perceived cutoff at 5 o'clock. Perceived. It was never communicated to us, nor are our agents. And thus, if we were to go with a 5 o'clock cutoff, that is roughly 14 hours a week gone, that we would not be able to recover. If you're looking at
per counting station.
2 hours per counting station translates into 14.
Right, yeah, 14 hours a week. Yeah.
No, my correction, 20 hours per week. That would be gone. Now, if you look at two and a half hours per box, it would impact the operation significantly through the week. And as it starts to accumulate, you're going to see the effects. So what we've asked for is for there to not be this perceived cutoff at 5, and that we work till the end. If possible, maybe we can have more counting stations or extended hours, because the staff of the Elections Commission, they're not working every day.
Lenox, before we get into that, if you don't mind, you said that the Elections Commission staff is doing an excellent job. What are some of the things that in your view is done really good?
Well, I'd say from the moment the container, let's say they are very straight with what they have to get accomplished. They go to the containers, they ensure that the locks are there. They obviously have the agents there to open the locks, then the boxes are documented and transport. They get to the room, pictures are taken. The public, at least the parties, can see the integrity of the box. When they go through, they have a checklist, a very comprehensive checklist that they go through about the contents of the box. All agents are privy to that information. And when they start counting the votes, they show both sides of the votes of the ballot paper. They put a light over it to ensure the integrity or the authenticity of the ballot. And then they show both sides. They put it under a projector so that everyone sees who that vote was counted for. When that is done, they move it off and then they go to the next. When that process is completed, they obviously tally it. They produce an SOR, a statement of recount. Everyone who is present, they sign that. When that is done, all the contents are put back in the box and resealed. Every party is given an SOR, and then they go through that process again. There is something that is called an observation report that was also part of the order. Now, that observation report in itself, and we could dive into this a bit deeper as we start this conversation, has become a point of contention, and we could talk about that in a little bit. But in terms of what I'd say, the transparent component of it, the staff have been very professional, and I'd say they've definitely elevated the bar.
Excellent. So you've given an A+ to the staff at GCOM for their professionalism and the way they're doing this recount so far. Is that a fair assessment?
That is correct. I mean, like I said, there are some minor issues that continue to operate, let's say, on a dime. Take, for example, when we came in, they had no issues with cell phones, just as long as we did not live stream anything. At this point, no one live stream anything. I will tell you that much, to my knowledge. There was a video that was produced of an APNU AFC candidate pretty much abusing out on day one, but that was not live streamed, that was recorded. There was no prohibition on recording. But that we've dealt with that. But then we came back, I mean, 2 days ago, when we left the structure, there was nothing communicated to us, but then we were informed that on each door that there was a notice that cell phones are prohibited. That is an infringement on our rights. And that in itself, when we complained, it was addressed. They removed the signs, and we were permitted to take our phones in. Obviously, we had to respect certain protocols. We cannot reveal the identity of the people in the room.
Yeah.
We cannot reveal the identity of the staff, stuff like that. But the point I wanted to bring out is that all of these seemingly minor yet very impactful decisions were being made by one person without communicating that to the political parties. So what?
But then the commission shelved that, right? The commission overruled that.
Correct. But what we requested today in that meeting with the commission is that any decision that is made that will impact this process or impact the stakeholders' participation, we request that is communicated in writing, because if it is not in writing, that means that someone could just come in on a whim and say, you know what, today you're not permitted. Sure, you have to wear, something else, stuff like that.
All right. Before you go on to the observation report and to what's going on with the agent from parties, Ram, you want to ask Lenox any question?
Yeah, Lenox, I was curious about, in the time of Nixon, they used to say, follow the money. Is this an unlimited budget that GCOM has? Is anybody interested how much they spent as of March 4th and how much they're going to spend after that, depending on how long this thing takes?
Thank you for your question. You're asking me a question to which no one has the answer. I don't have the answer. The only person that would have that answer would be the chief accountant or the permanent secretary, if there is one, at the Guyana Elections Commission, or maybe the CEO in himself. But we know that the Guyana Elections Commission was given a budget of $8 billion to conduct these elections, amongst other things. And what we are seeing, I don't know how that money is spent, but I would say that they're most definitely treating all of us, all of the political parties and the staff, including the police, very well as in terms of meals. But the budget in itself, I cannot comment on that because I don't have that information with me.
Ram, that's an excellent question, because as an accountant, we know there's always a cost-benefit analysis, and the cost incurred, what benefit is derived from that cost. I mean, this instance, we don't know how much GCOM is spending, but of course it's substantial. We know also that, as Lenox mentioned, about just over 10% of the ballot boxes so far has been counted. So we have 90%, just under 90% more to go. Based on the current rate, we are looking at maybe another 35 days more counting if they do not extend the hours or increase the number of counting stations. So the cost, as Ram mentioned, is an important part of this exercise, and no one seemed to tell us what the costs will be like.
You see, I'm a Canadian taxpayer. I support what my High Commission is doing, but they are also extending themselves in offering expenses to the foreign observers and so on, part of them. And that is our money. How long is it going to go on? And if the matter had finished on March 3rd or 4th, none of this would have incurred.
Well, here's the thing, Mr. Ram. The interesting thing is there is no greater cost. I mean, I understand that it is Canadian tax dollars that are being paid. I paid some of that last year. So technically, it is my money that I'm recouping from the Canadian government in this sense. And I'm sure many other Guyanese who continue to pay tax and have property in Guyana. But that being said, I would also suggest at this point that the money that was expended to get the CARICOM team here, it is not significant enough to impact the Canadian budget when they're spending billions to, what I'd say, to keep the economy alive. But I don't want for us to lose sight of the importance of this process, the cost in itself, the financial out-of-pocket money in itself. I think I don't want to diminish the importance of that, but I don't think that that is the number one priority or the number one thing at the front of our minds at this point. What we want to do is to see this process completed with the utmost transparency so that we have results of integrity.
Lenox,
And then I'm sure when we have a government or an administration that is legitimate, then we are going to have an opportunity to peruse all the books and to be able to address the financial deficit that this may create. But as it stands right now, we cannot cry about a process to which we have absolutely no control and we have absolutely no view of the financial records. And we could go to great lengths to request it, but we're not going to get it.
If I can stop you there, the thing is, this is an audit, and I'm an auditor as well. If you do 10% of the sample of the whole, 10% of the whole, and you see consistently the results are the same with the statement of polls, SOP that we have in our possession, what that tells me is that the probability of that number change is very remote. So we are spending money to go through an exercise that will give us the same result with the statements of poll. 10% is already done. There is no significant change in the result, if any at all. As a matter of fact, they report the same. So that's the point. We're spending hundreds of millions for a result that will tell us what we did then.
I understand your point, but we cannot belabor something to interrupt a process that we have no control over. At this juncture, whether we would have completed 1%, 10%, 20%, or 90%, the process still has to continue. So the cost at this point, I don't want to say is irrelevant, but inconsequential to the process. The process has to continue regardless of the financial cost in itself. Yes, there are similarities in terms of the SOPs that have been revealed in the SORs. Mingo's math is starting to reveal itself, but outside of that, we cannot stop this process. And if there is a requirement for more funding to be injected into the system to complete this recount, then we are obviously going to have to explore that when we get there. But as it stands right now, the Guyanese population, we're not thinking about the financial cost to this process. What we want to see is this process concluded, regardless of the out-of-pocket cost. That is
excellent point. Okay, great point.
Would it be possible to make a motion to stop the process once Region 4 is finished and it shows exactly what the SOPs have by the PPP and other parties?
Everything, right? Yeah. The interesting thing is we could explore the world of possibilities, but the Commission has undertaken to do a recount, and that recount is not going to be concluded until all 10 regions are completed. That is the reality on the ground.
And in addition to that, Ram, is that Region 4, so far, only 6%, well, 4.5% of the boxes actually is completed. So by the time Region 4 is done, it'll be the end of the exercise. I think that's why they stretched it out so long. So there
Well,
is.
that's the point I'm trying to make. That's a contentious one, but if that's the way they do it, we sit and wait.
I know. All right, Lenox, you were saying about the, the observation report. And we have seen in that observation report that's read to us daily, is a lot of, I don't see how you can link that observation report with the valid votes cast. One of the main issue APNU AFC bring up all the time is serial number 345, number 387, 215, whatever the number is. I think they're throwing darts on the wall, hoping that some stick. That these persons either they're dead or they're migrated or something like that. I mean, are those beneficial to this recount at all? I mean, what is the purpose of that?
Charles, there are two components to that question, really. The first one, let's go back to March 2nd and what happened after that. The elections, when it was completed, all political parties, the president, leader of the opposition, all political parties, inclusive of the international observers, the foreign missions, which are the ABCEs, in Guyana, everyone said that the elections were free, fair, and transparent. Everyone endorsed that. The president himself went to great lengths to say that we have had credible elections. Elections, right? So all political parties, the commission in itself said that. After they recognized that they would have lost, and I think Mr. Freddie Kissoon wrote amply about this, the narrative, they tried to shift it now, that the Russians infiltrated the system. First, it was 3 Russians, and then we deported them because we didn't want to charge them. And then that story evolved from 3 Russians to 5 Russians who were not even Russians. One of them was Libyan, right? So how do you now have Russians who are not Russians infiltrating and what I'd say hacking into a manual system? It is impossible. So that in itself is nonsensical. So when they go from legitimate, free and fair and transparent elections to the system, to a manual system being hacked, it is an opportunity now that they're trying to find get away with Mingo's mangled math, right? So as we start to evolve this process now, they recognize that the amount of eyes that are on this, the threat of sanctions that they tried very, very hard to hide, the embarrassment and all these things. So they got to this point, but they know that no other thing that they had said in the past really holds any water. So what they want to do at this juncture is to undermine the credibility of the Elections Commission and undermine the results that emanates from those elections. But keep in mind, all along, they were ready to swear in Mr. Granger on these results. So now they get to this point and they did a 180 and want to undermine the results and the process and say it was flawed to the point where they don't want to accept it.
And I asked that question. Yeah.
The second thing is, when they come out and throw all of these numbers, there is no basis for any of that information to be credible. They simply walk in and, Charles, as you put it, instead of just throwing darts on a wall, it is like putting a blindfold on, spinning someone else around a few times, put the dart in their hand and throw it. That is where it's going to land because they have no basis for that. And if indeed they are privy to the names of people who would or would not have voted, that is a violation of the electoral laws in Guyana because there is a reason why it's called a secret ballot, so that no one can be a victim of electoral crime in this sense.
And
so there are a series of things that are wrong with what they're doing.
I asked that question because what you said. Yeah, go on.
Charles, so the issue with that is that they're not really focused on the integrity of their claims. They simply want to throw out as many claims as they possibly could so that they could compile and say, look, We have had claims of X number of thousands of things that are wrong with this to substantiate now that, or to support their claim, not substantiate, but to support their claim that something is wrong without providing evidence. Now, when they get to that, we have to remember that on polling day, you had multiple parties, 11 political parties contested these elections. You had a commission, you had international observers. So for them to say that one of these persons voted, it would mean that all political parties, the Guyana Elections Commission, and all international observers conspired to have one person vote, which is an absurdity.
Highly
It is
improbable.
insanity.
Highly improbable. Why I'm going to get
Impossible.
why I asked you the question is that when I asked you the beginning, if the staff of the commission, you say you give them an A plus based on what they're doing, and as you rightly said, the president, the opposition leader, all international observers, everyone who was there in Guyana, they said election day of March 2nd, the election was free, fair, transparent, it went smoothly. Everyone who wanted to vote was allowed to vote, wanted a name on the list, and so on. Now, in that elections, the PNC, APNO AFC claimed that they won the election. Now they're saying every ballot box that is counted, what I've seen now is that there's always an objection to maybe 3 names, 4 names, 5 names, 7 names. Two things there. One is that they said that the person is either dead or they migrated. The thing about the migration is those are personal records. There, if I go and look for your immigration record, that will be unconstitutional. So for these agents to come and say that these persons migrated, that will be unconstitutional to go and vet those things. Only a court of law can permit that to happen. So my question to you is, why are they bringing it up when only in an elections petition through the court can determine if a person is overseas or not overseas on election day?
All right, Charles. The laws of Guyana states that you could be a Guyanese, live abroad, and still come back and vote. It is not against the law for someone, say someone like yourself, for example, to come back and vote, just as long as your name is on the voters list, on the OLE, right? Outside of that, we went through a registration process, we went through a claims and objections process, so they would have had ample time to vet the list. When they got to the polling booth, they had ample time to object through the electoral process, and you're quite correct. If at this juncture there is information that comes out, which I don't know how they would get it aside from by illegal means, that Charles voted, but he's living in the U.S. and he never came back. Then you go through an elections petition. Once again, all they're trying to do is to create enough mud, to murky it enough, so that when they throw it at their supporters and it goes in their eyes, their supporters would see the truth, illegalities, and accept it as a clear picture. And that is what they're trying to do right now.
Ram, any question for Lenox?
No, he is very eloquent because he's a Canadian. He used to be.
Okay, Lenox.
I want to go back to something though, right? Why are we at this juncture? We've gone through this process, and I saw today Mr. Alexander said that it was not the courts that stopped this process from going on, which should have been done, 2.5, maybe 3 weeks ago, close to a month ago when CARICOM came here. He said it was an intervention by the Attorney General's chamber. So right off the bat, even though they have said that GCOM is independent, we have the PNC itself putting their hands into GCOM and forcing them to stop a process. We could have finished this process already when the first team came here. The second point I want to make is the absence of the Carter Center. Mr. Ramjatan went on TV, on the news, and said that whatever decision was made to deny the Carter Center was made above him. The only person that exists above him is the President of Guyana, because he is the only constitutional office bearer currently. And even to that, it's in a caretaker status. Now, to get to that point, it would mean that Mr. Granger and himself refused the Carter Center's presence. The big question that I want people to ask themselves, and I'm pretty sure most people know the answer to this, is why would the president of Guyana not want the Carter Center here to see what is going on? And the only reason I could think of it is that they're not interested in the integrity of the results, because we fear that somewhere along the way they are going to try to undermine this recount process.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's my gut feeling is that look what it did to Mr. Jonas. Apparently couldn't get on. Sent us a text saying that he's still at the counting area, so he couldn't make it. They said that Timothy had some symptoms of the COVID-19, and because of that, he had to go through a test. This is my prediction, Lenox, and tell me if I'm wrong. I believe maybe by next week or the following week, APNU will say that there are 2 persons who test positive in the site, so the site has to close down to sanitize for 2 weeks. Everyone will have to go in self to be self-isolated for 2 weeks, and then after that, hopefully, this whole thing is squashed. I believe, honestly, in my opinion, I might be wrong, that APNU AFC is out to stop this count, because what this count is showing, as you said, is 2 things. One, the statement of polls is almost exactly with the statement of recount. And for Georgetown, the region 4 votes, what Mr. Mingo did, and we have some examples, and maybe Devin, you can help us put those examples on the screen, where the statement of polls, the statement of recount is exactly the same compared to Mr. Mingo's report, which is way out. So I think the PNC, APNU AFC knows that they have lost the election, and they will do everything in their power to derail this process. What do you think?
Charles, I have to agree with you on that. I mean, if you've never seen the moon fall to the earth, I would tell you that APNU is prepared to go and drag the moon if they have to and have it land on the convention center. If they, anything that they could do, if they could change the fate of that convention center, they would. So I would not say that any action is beyond them at this point. There's a reason why Joe Harmon was put in charge of the COVID task force. It is not meant to curtail the spread of COVID in Guyana or to address it or to strategically deal with it. It is meant for Joe Harmon to separate himself from Ministry of the Presidency so that whatever he does to undermine this count is removed from Mr. Granger. So it's just to put that point of separation. I don't see anything of integrity emanating from the APNU AFC at this point. And when you talk about weaponizing, as Jerry would have put it, weaponizing COVID, that is precisely what they tried to do with Mr. Jonas, with Tim. Where they simply called and said, you're showing signs of COVID, you have to get tested. When he went and uplifted the letter, the doctor told him, well, some people could be asymptomatic, but still test positive. So if I am asymptomatic, how am I showing symptoms? So the weaponization of the coronavirus that we are fearful of at this point. And you're quite right. They may want to go to the extent and say, you know what, we have to maybe shut this place down to go through this. And the world would know why that is going on. But I will tell you this, the threat and the reality of sanctions coming down on the heads of the authors of this rig or potential rig, they are going to feel it.
But I think that is coming. They will shut that place down under the pretense that there were a couple of people in there who have tested positive for the COVID, and all of you guys have to go in isolation for 14 days. And I think that's coming. But Lennox, I know you have to go, but please stay with us. Please stay with us. Let's go to commercial break. Let's go to commercial break. And then, go on.
Finish this point before you go to commercial break. If you look at what happened over the last 2 days, the Ministry of Public Health released a list of COVID active areas. And lo and behold, most of those active areas are around the Encapsule, the Arthur Chung Convention Center. Think on that while you go to your break.
Thank you. We'll come back in 1 minute, viewers.
Hey, it's Richard David. I'm coming to you during these extraordinary times where we're all being asked to do more. We're all being asked to do something differently. To tell you that the safest way to vote is actually right at home. Go to nycabsentee.com and request a ballot. You complete the ballot, it comes with a stamp, and you send it back. You can still go out and vote on June 23rd, but the safest way to do it is right at home and to do it right now. Thank you.
January marks 1 year since Globespan 24x7 embarked on this initiative to offer a platform that brings in all sides, all points of view, and all concerns. Viewers in Guyana and across the world are participating in discussions that are bringing to light issues relating to social, economic, and political matters that have been plaguing our nation. Globespan's platform offers Guyanese to express their concerns and discuss solutions in the political realm, thereby addressing the polarized situation. Discussions also include social ills, such as alcoholism, domestic violence, and suicides that have been plaguing the people. The platform also mitigates the brain drain by having speakers that live in Guyana and across the world participate in these discussions. This concept will avail a broader view for the benefit of all Guyanese, so Globespan needs your support to offset the expenses. Kindly contribute by clicking the link in the description to help support these programs.
All right, welcome back, viewers. We have Mr. Lenox Shuman, the leader of the Liberty and Justice Party, and Mr. Sahadeo from an attorney in Canada. We are sorry we couldn't, we couldn't get our other guest. Says I think he's occupied at the Recount, and also Mr. Jonas. He is also not available to be on the program. There are some issues there. So Lenox, I know you. Thank you for staying on with us. The question is this. So far, we have had interviews with APNU, AFC, Mr. Alexander, Commissioner was there. And what some of the things they raised up, which I was surprised they didn't put it on the list of things to discuss with the Commission, is that they're saying that ballot boxes have more votes than the ticked off on the list. And I'm wondering if they know, and they know that's a big hoax they're pulling on people's eyes, because they know that in those ballot boxes, the discipline services vote was in those ballot boxes. So when the presiding officer at the end of the day finished the voting process, those who voted at the polling station, he or she will mix that vote with the rest of the vote, the discipline services vote. And of course, there'll be more votes than there is ticked off on the list, because the presiding officer do not know who these people are. So they were raising that frivolous issue. They know the answer. They know it's baloney what they're doing, but they still raise it knowing that the discipline services vote is in a lot of those ballot boxes. What do you have to say about that?
Charles, there is no legal requirement for a tick to be placed next to anyone's name. That is an administrative issue. So what they're trying to do once again is just pretty much build frivolous non-issue and make it into an issue. There's no, and I quite agree with you that, you know, the discipline services, when they vote, it goes into those things. But there is no legal requirement for those ticks to match the number of voters. All you have to do is to ensure one person does not vote twice. How do you do that? You're given a portfolio with, or a little file, my apologies, with the person's picture, their identification number, and their name. All you do is look at that, and when that process is done, you could simply close that folder and put it aside, and you could have a pile that is voted. So there's no legal requirement for a tick to be next to anyone's name. What Mr. Alexander said is pretty much that, but I think the Chronicle in itself inflated to mislead, with an obvious intent to mislead the nation as to what happened.
And that's the point. The thing is, they said they win the election. They said, you said to us tonight that the commission staff is doing an excellent job. Now, APNU AFC is pushing the entire commission staff under the bus, saying that they messed up so bad during the day of election, when everyone thinks that the presiding officer and the election commission staff did an excellent job. And not only that, every polling station had representatives from political parties. So what you said earlier, it appears as though what the APNU is saying is that the PPP bribed the presiding officer, bribed the polling clerk, bribed all the elections commission staff, bribed the APNU representative on that polling station, bribed the observers. Everybody they bribed, so the people must have had an abundance of cash to bribe all these presiding officers that they said that people voted who should not have voted. And the other thing, Lenox, is that a lot of Guyanese I know here in the US who went from Brooklyn, and most of them are supporters of APNU. They're citizens of the United States, but they went and they voted in the election because their name is on the list. And you're entitled to vote once your name is on the list. So what the PNC APNU is doing is exactly what Bassett Williams did to the party after the no-comment election. They said, you're a dual citizen, you can't be in parliament. So the Charandas story, it came back to bite them. They're saying that you can't be a minister, it came back to bite them. So the thing is, everything that they're doing, it is coming back to bite them, and still these people not learning. What is the problem?
Charles, there is no consistent story that these guys can tell. There's no consistent story that they could tell to convince the nation anymore. You see, when you would have identified the first lie and you get caught, there is no lie that you could tell to cover up that lie, because everything that has emanated from their camp has been a series of lies and trying to shift the narrative in what these elections represent. So, like I said, when they started off, the elections were free, fair, and transparent. Then they moved to 3 Russians, then 5 Russians, and then, it is a legal challenge, even though they themselves have been interrupting it. We didn't interrupt it. Now you're at this process. Oh, you know what? Even though the elections were transparent and we were willing to swear Granger in on those numbers, the elections are rigged. Well, did you rig the elections for the PPP to win? How did you get to that point if you won? So there's nothing that is consistent that is coming out of their camp to give any credence to anything that they say. At this point, it is just a house of cards of lies that they've built around them, and it is starting to crumble. It is now, how do they walk out from that mess that they've created?
And it's not that we are against APNU, I'm not against APNU AFC, is that they change their stories so often. Since the beginning to now, they're actually moving the goalposts every day as we go on. So it's not that I'm against APNU AFC. I supported them in 2015. And I want to make that public. I supported them because I wanted a change in government. But what they're doing over the last 2 months, I'm sure that they have lost a lot of their own supporters, because I believe a lot of people who voted APNU AFC are so dissatisfied with what they're doing now. They're so embarrassed that if a new election is called, a lot of these people who voted APNU AFC will not even go to the polls. So embarrassed they are with what this coalition is doing.
And I would tell you that the majority of the staff that we have seen are just tired. They're just absolutely tired and fed up because they've seen what it is. You go to some of them and you talk to them, oh, Mr. Shuman, thank you for coming out. Thank you guys for doing this. How are you doing? We just want this process to be over. And you know that many people would have voted for APNU. The numbers represent that. But the people in themselves are just tired of it. It is not what happened in the last 2 months. It is what happened from December 21st that is being realized right now. That is what the people are tired of. Yes, we expected that after this electoral process that they would have learned. That's why we gave them another chance. But guess what? You didn't give them 1 chance. You didn't give them 2 chances. You gave them 3 chances. And right now where we are, you're at the end of that 3 chance. That's the reality.
I have a question now.
Yeah, Ram, go on.
I thought there was some objection to counting all the regions at the same time. Was that dealt with? Because how was this work now? All the boxes are coming in at the same time, not confusing for the regions?
No. Well, you see, in some regions they have smaller boxes. It's not consistently like you've got 400 votes and all boxes are coming out and being counted at the same time. Basically, when one box is done, they simply go down to that container and pull another one for that station. We thought that it would have been a bit chaotic to have 4 separate containers open at the same time because now you need roughly 44 eyes on that box and so on and so forth. But I would tell you it has been very well managed by the Elections Commission. The perceived, what I'd say, soft cutoff that they had, that the APNU AFC had said that they're not going to work beyond that. Today we saw GCOM actually took command and control of that. When APNU says we are not going to come down and open any container after 5 o'clock, the Guyana Elections Commission staff said, we are in control of this process. We are going to go and remove those locks because all of these other parties are here. We have work to do. So if you don't want to be present, by all means, don't be present. And they went ahead and they were going to cut the locks. I don't know if they actually did it.
Do I understand it clearly? You're counting 1 to 4 regions at now, presently?
Folks.
Yes, Ram. We are counting region 1, 2, 3, and 4 simultaneously, yes.
So you're not going to region 5 unless region 4 is completed?
No. Whichever station, if region 1 is done with station 1 and 2, then that station will start region 5 ballots. When region 2 is done, that station will start region, so on and so on. So, yeah.
So we're still looking at the scenario that region 4 will not finish until the very last because of the volume.
I think that's the plan. But as Lenox said, the Elections Commission staff has done a great job. So I think there's a lot of transparency, a lot of fairness, and I think the Elections Commission has taken the mantle knowing. The staff know. The staff, like everybody else, like APNU, knows that they have lost the election. I'm told, Lenox, maybe you can help me here, that senior officials in the ministries, they are told quietly, listen, APNU has lost the election, and I'm informed that they're starting to destroy files and to begin gradually to exit the offices. Is that what you're hearing in Georgetown, Lenox? You're there.
Charles, I don't know. I'm trying to call you back on Globespan because via my computer. Because my battery is dying here. I don't know if you guys are getting that on that side.
Well, and we're still seeing you. We are still seeing you, yeah.
We're just going to end the call with you and call you right back, okay?
Yeah. End on this one here, please. Okay. Go ahead.
All right, Ram, by the time Lenox is back.
Yep.
Lenox?
Yeah.
Hearing us?
Yeah. Are we on?
Yeah, you're on, Lenox.
Yeah.
All right, my apologies. I'm just trying to close out this thing here.
Okay. Thanks for staying on, Lenox. I know you have another appointment. Yeah, you were saying.
Yes. So in terms of the information that is emanating from these various areas, I cannot confirm nor deny that because I am generally in the recount station all day. When I go there first thing in the morning, I don't leave until all the activities are closed off. So I don't know what's going on in those ministries and stuff.
But I was informed that the PN APNU has quietly, they have now acknowledged that based on the recount, that there is no way they won the election. So they're gradually moving out. Ram, you have a question? Ram?
Yes.
You have a question?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think, I just wonder how we can thank these foreign observers if this result comes out credible and trustworthy. What kind of a praise do we give to them, and how do we show our appreciation for their presence?
Well, I would say that the greatest compliment we could give to the international observers and the people that we have is to ensure that we reform the system. We express our gratitude through affirmation and obviously through our conduct in the future. I think there would be no greater compliment than to know that they have influenced the system to the point where the electorate and the international community would have the confidence in the integrity of these institutions. If we cannot do that at minimum, then I would say that any gratitude that we could offer beyond that would be irrelevant. And I think that is the way we need to start looking at things.
But I think also APNU and whoever the government is must realize that here, this is a village now. The world is a village, that everybody looking over each other. And I think Freddie Kissoon has really put it beautifully, when he talk about, had it not been for these international observers, we might not have been in this position, because the international outcry forced APNU AFC to do what we are doing now. Had it not been for these people, they might have just brushed us aside, brushed everybody aside, swearing Granger, and then that would have been fine. But because of the sanction that was, threatened, to them, they had to take steps to do things correctly. But the observers, I think, whether it's the PNC in office, whether it's the PP in office, they do what they have to do. They're always for transparency. They want the right thing to be done. I mean, we can argue in 2015 that had Region 8 been recounted, that seat might have gone to the PPP. We don't know. That petition was still in the court, and then it would have been the same reverse of 2011, where the government has the executive, but the parliament is controlled by the opposition. That didn't happen because I think I'm told that the Americans told Serge Bali, forget about Region 8, declare the result, and let us get the government going again. Is that what you're hearing, Lenox?
Well, I can't speak to 2011 and 2015. Because I was not really engaged too much in those elections. I was not involved in it. I can say going forward, and Mr. Sahadeo, I'm very happy to know that you and some, what I'd say, staunch supporters of democracy in Guyana started that petition. I think it is just an absolute farce that is perpetuated by some members of the PNC camp. When Her Excellency did that interview, she said that the charges were frivolous. And it is on a single word that you're asking for a high commissioner to be removed. We have to remember that the high commissioner is not acting in her personal capacity. If Mr. Chatterjee is removed from this country, then all that happens is someone comes by and responds appropriately to the very same issues. Because at the end of the day, that is not her position. That is the government of Canada's position. So you could remove one Lillian Chatterjee, you could remove two, you could remove five. At the end of the day, the approach would still be the same, because that is how their foreign policy is devised, right? If you look at the Americans' foreign policy also, if you decide that you want to remove Miss Lynch, then all you're going to do is find someone else who's going to come there and do the very same thing, because they're representing a country. They're not representing their personal views. And I think it is an insult to our international partners for any party to go that route. I hope that when these elections are concluded, that we develop a very strong protocol in how to address some of these things. I'm not talking about infringing on anyone's right to freedom of speech, but we also owe our international partners who continuously and consistently support us as a country some degree of respect. Canada was if not the first, I'd say the second country that we have established diplomatic relations with. They're the first country outside of our post-colonial identity that would have recognized Guyana as a sovereign country. That is 54 years and onwards now. So and they're also our largest trading partner. So how now do we go and repair that relationship? It is something that we have to sit down and think as to how we could remove some of these minuscule issues and minds from influencing this country's position internationally.
The point
well
is,
said.
in addition to all of that, I on a lighter matter, I know all the Canadian, all the Guyana passports and the dollars and so on are printed by Canadians. But,
even the ballots were printed by Canada.
Yeah, but if she is removed, we have to go to that additional step that the government of Canada better make sure they have good reasons. And the reasons that we are now hearing is a case for what the lawyers call no case submission. If they have the right to remove her or recall her, but if they do, they better come up with better evidence than what we're hearing. Period. And that's why we're writing to the Prime Minister.
Well, that's a good point. And Lenox, your answer was so on point. Am I seeing Mr. Lenox Shuman being the next Minister of Foreign Affairs in a new government? Lenox, are you hearing me? Lenox not hearing me then. Lenox?
That's too tough a question.
I know. Lenox, you hearing me? Devin, I think we're having some technical issues.
Charles, I have to call you back from this thing again.
You're not hearing us.
Yeah, okay. Charles, going back to our petition, I hope people will read it. It has, two reasons. One concentrates around the recall of Lillian Chatterjee. The second one is the support of all the other people who are supporting democracy, the foreign observers. So that's why I hope people read both and just not think we're just concentrating on Canada. All the observers deserve that they should be respected and appreciated for the sacrifice they're making. And I hope people read the entire petition, not to think, well, this is just about Canada. So that's why we're sending it all over and hoping that people read it and sign it and pass it on.
And I'm told, Ram, that never in history has there been a removal of a Canadian High Commission from petition of this sort by a few people. The only time it happened was in 1976 in Russia, but in Guyana that has never happened, and we don't think the High Commissioner will be removed. Lenox, before you come on, I had mentioned that the way you spoke just now, are we seeing Mr. Lenox Shuman as the next foreign minister in the next government of Guyana?
Charles, thank you for the compliment, but I don't think that I'm any diplomat by any means. I'm just way too frank to be a diplomat at this point. It is something that needs a lot of work. But I want to say this.
Well, we have a foreign minister now who can't even speak, so you can speak very well.
Well, I want to say this before we start into that part, right? Going back to the narrative of the elections, it was an American firm, Mercury, that hacked into the system. And how did they hack into the system? Purportedly, right? They utilized the Russians, who were not Russians. The ridiculousness of this is that I feel sorry for the Russians, because they are the ones that we are blaming for what? I mean, we need better foreign policy before we go and throw wild accusations out there without even liaising with any foreign state to see what assets they may have. Granted, they may not disclose, but we have an obligation to develop that strong international relationship so that we could know when our borders are infiltrated. We have to have a longer reach to influence trade relationships, because we are a growing economy. We are going to continuously grow. So what we have seen out of this, I want to say outgoing administration at this point, what we have seen from them is how not to practice foreign policy. And I think that the government of Canada will recall Ms. Lillian Chatterjee, because it's not a petition that is emanating from the country. It is a petition that is emanating from one party. And I don't know of anywhere in history where any government would have recalled their ambassador on partisan political ground internally.
Well said. I agree with that. But Mr. Sahadeo, I mean, despite what Lenox just said, I think I like your initiative to do that petition to let the Canadian government knows that there are thousands of Guyanese out there who support the High Commissioner in what she's doing. Because as Lenox rightly said, she's representing the government of Canada, not her personal views. Like Ambassador Lynch representing the views of the United States, not her own views.
Yeah, it's not just Canadians or Guyanese. It's the whole world. They have witnessed what happened, and democracy is there to be tested, and everybody is looking at it.
All right, Lenox. Yeah, thanks, Ram. Sorry about that, Lenox. So, in closing, what do you see happening in the next couple of days and next couple of weeks? Do you see that this process continue as it's going on? Do you foresee any hiccups? What estimated time do you see this thing might come to an end?
Charles, based on our ongoing evaluation, we had anticipated around 80 days. And as we start to see the machinery come to life, tomorrow they have a critical meeting, which should evaluate the process and the progress that we've made thus far. And beyond that, now it is to see what kind of plans they come up with, if they're going to increase the workstations, extend the time, what internal mechanism, if they could streamline the process a bit. How are we going to get that done? It would be very important to see what comes out of that meeting tomorrow to accelerate this. I'd say not I, but we as newer parties, and I'm sure the People's Progressive Party, Civic, may also be of this view. I cannot speak on their behalf, that we're very cautious and cognizant of what the COVID task force was meant to do. They're not meant to curb the spread of coronavirus in Guyana nor to address it. They're simply put in there as a mechanism to buttress the government's point, and they're going to do everything that they can to influence this process. And we're very cognizant again of the point that you've made, where we may see a potential interruption for unsubstantiated reasons, and the weaponization of the coronavirus in itself being one of them.
Mr. going on 7 days a week, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
But based on if 11% of the ballots already completed,
Charles,
and that is...
Charles, let me finish this part here, right? I'm going to leave you shortly. I think maybe after this point, if you've got one more question, I could entertain that. But today we met with the commission, and the commission was very receptive to our suggestions. Whether or not they implement them or they address them, it is yet to be seen. But we also met with the CARICOM team to pretty much update them on where we are with what we think it is. And they were very, at least it did not seem that what we presented were far off from what they are thinking. They did not obviously offer anything because that is not their position.
Yeah.
But by acknowledgement in itself, it was a very telling sign that what we are seeing on the ground and what they have seen closely correlates, right?
So you see, I know. Thanks for staying on with us so long. But you see the Elections Commission taking a stand and being independent in your view.
Yes, we see that the Elections Commission has finally found its own, and I'm happy and sad that we are at this juncture. I'm happy because it has shown the nation that we cannot live by the same means anymore. The nation now sees the importance of reforming not only this structure, but for constitutional reform and governance. The sad part is that it has taken us to the stage of international embarrassment to get to this point. Millions of dollars expended to no end, thousands of jobs lost, an economy that has almost collapsed, plus a pandemic that we cannot deal with, right? It's a cascading of issues that has brought us to this point. And if we as a country cannot learn from this process in how we could better enhance it to suit the needs of Guyanese, then I would say that history would mark this generation and the ones previous as arguably the dumbest generation in the world and in Guyana for not having to recognize when this greatest challenge presented the greatest opportunity and we never took it.
And I'm told, Lenox, that based on your meetings with the chairperson and the commission, that I think she's considering either lengthening the time for the recount or increasing the number of counting stations. So I think they might make a decision soon. So hopefully either they extend the time or they extend the number of polling stations. Hopefully we can finish the polling booth so we can finish this exercise much faster. Lenox, it has been such a great pleasure to have you to stay on for so long. I know you have a commitment. Do you want to say anything in closing?
Yes, I want to ask our people in the diaspora, whether you're in Canada, US, the UK, the European Union, or wherever, to continue to keep a watchful eye on what's going on in Guyana. We on the ground are working tirelessly and diligently to see what I'd say legitimate and transparent conclusion to this process. And whatever you can do to reach out to your member of parliament or your member of Congress or the Senate to at least appraise them of what's happening here. Even though they have their intelligence, I would tell you that nothing speaks louder than the person who wants to influence their own house at home. And that being said, when you talk to them, ensure that they know what your position is and what the diaspora's position is in supporting the democracy, because we need all of that international help. We cannot get this done alone. We need everyone, all Guyanese outside of Guyana, to also support this process.
Thank you. And Mr. Sahadeo, you want to say anything in closing?
No, it's been good to be on the program, but when, as we proceed with the petition, maybe one other day when my computer is working, you will see my face.
Thank you. And to our viewers out there, we want to thank you again. We want to apologize for Mr. Sahadeo Singh. He couldn't make it. And of course, to our other guest, he couldn't make it as well. As we said at the beginning, we tried to get an app news supporter to be on this program, but we are unsuccessful. We hope next week we can have an app news supporter to be with us so we can discuss the issues that affect us and the country as a whole. Again, we want to thank Nohar Singh for giving us a platform, to Devin for being our technical specialist, and to your viewers out there, we want to thank you so much. Don't worry, everything will be fine. Guyana will rise again, and Guyana will come bolder. I think after this fiasco is over, we'll have a new government that is elected by the people and for the people, and we trust that the new government will govern our country in a new direction so that all of us become part of the decision-making process. Again, thank you so much. And here from New York, God bless you, and thank you so much. Bye now.
Thank you.